Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the WCW Saturday Night Review Series for the 23rd of May, 1992. And we kind of go into there is a football player who is the guest host. I'm not even mentioning his name because it's kind of irrelevant at this point. They were very southern at the time, and they would have guest hosts on of a variety of topics, football players, baseball players, singers, country music predominantly, over the years. And it's kind of, I don't know, to me it's kind of goofy to a degree in that they certainly would push that, and I think it kept them rather regional. Um, at this point, I believe Scott Steiner is the television champion at the same time. But he and his brother Rick, of course, Steiner brothers, having a good go at some tag matches here. Tracy Smothers and Ricky Morton are your team combatants here. They are moving towards the NWA Television or Tag Team Championship Tournament, which was kind of reestablished by the summer of 1992. NWA and WCW are separate, but WCW is still the charter member, maybe not the charter member, but a key member of the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance. At that point, they would have multiple deals as far as championships, separate championships, and the like. I don't really ever understand the nature of separation other than Ted Turner's involvement and his desire to have his own sort of core brand and rebranding and all that stuff. Anyway, Scott Steiner and Tracy Smothers are pretty aggressive with each other in the earlier stages of this process. Smothers, who'd been a part of the Wild Eye Southern Boys a couple of years before. Smothers, I think, is one of the most underrated guys ever. Love his Smoky Mountain stuff. Love his independent stuff years later. He passed, I believe, last year. I know he passed within the last 2 years. I think it was last year, though, from cancer. But he is amazing, and if you're not familiar with Tracy, worth going out of your way to see. He actually does a good bit of heel work here, and continues to be a major force for a while. Tag off to Rick Steiner. Steiner comes in, uses his power, hits a pretty good shoulder breaker, and is pretty aggressive, assertive here. And also at the time, Steiner's still becoming bigger in Japan, but do end up going to Japan quite a bit for the next couple of years. Morton comes in, and he's kind of there, away from the Rock and Roll Express, kind of off a 1991 failed heel run is Ricky Morton at this point. He fires back, gets a couple of shots off, nothing terribly major, but certainly gets caught with a power slam. Rick Steiner, and then hits a Steiner line. Rick Steiner, so powerful, I mean, just insanely so. At this time, or really any time during I'd say up until only 97, he started to slow down a little bit. But Rick Steiner, such a major force. And of course, Scott Steiner would become the big Papa Pump character and kind of go that way. They cut off, the heels do, the ring on Rick Steiner for a minute or two. I'd say a minute or two because it's really short. And then he comes back with the double Steiner line to the back of their heads and necks, which at the time was pretty awesome because there are people that love the Steiner brothers, and they continue to be probably the best tag team in the area at the time until Harlem Heat comes in several years later. The double underhook suplex by Scott Steiner is kind of a sit-out powerbomb sort of thing, and he just is throwing everybody around, tilt-a-whirl, all the way around the world by Scott Steiner, and he is lighting people up. They go on to become the tag team champions and the IWGP Japan champions as well. But they finish with a top rope bulldog, and away we go there. in the process. And then Dallas Page kind of talks about having his own talk show down with DDP. He kind of hints at it being sort of trashy ish, but doesn't really talk about it. And then actually, I mentioned this last week, but there is a kind of behind the scenes thing where he tracks down Paul Heyman, Paulie Dangerously, trying to get some ladies to pretend to be a major deal, and then Steamboat comes out. He's kind of walking through the crowd. He's trying to get even, and the Dangerous Alliance comes down. They've squared off. They are trying to get Ricky Steamboat to brawl with them on the set. This does not happen. Then we go to Sting. Sting talking about Vader. Sting talking about wanting to be the best fighting champion he can be. The Vader thing, we're also moving towards Cactus Jack at Beach Blast. They kind of start teasing that. And Cactus Jack at Beach Blast is about a month away at this point. That Beach Blast match, my favorite Cactus Jack match of all time, Beach Blast 92. If you've never seen that particular contest, worth going out of your way to see. I think it was the beginning, really, on a national stage of Cactus Jack being known for being nuts. Larry Santo and Steve Pritchard against the Super Invader, a.k.a. Hercules here. 2-on-1. I don't know why they're giving him the 2-on-1 treatment. They didn't end up pushing the Super Invader all that much, but, you know, he comes in, does some martial arts stuff, again, wearing kind of a red and black mask. A lot of punch kicks, martial arts, back kicks, and the like. Tosses the guy to the outside. Harley Race still managing as he did the week before, and certainly not worth terribly writing home about. Press slam sends him over the top rope to the floor. Now, if this had been a couple months later, that would have been a disqualification. Referee manages to just kind of let it go, and again, then we go to a update of the NWA Tag Team Championship Tournament. Promo for the Steiners. Steiners basically saying they don't know who they're going to fight. They're going to fight people internationally. It doesn't really matter if they know their names or not. And then we go to some highlights of Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Terry Bam Bam Gordy. They talk about being a big deal in Japan, being a big deal around the world, and being some of the toughest guys ever. We go to a highlight package of them beating up a couple of enhancement talents, running people over. The Steiners and Williams and Gordy in 1992, probably the biggest tag team program in the world, or at least in North America at the time. And hard-hitting matches, to say the very least. Williams and Gordy both have histories with the UWF, which actually ties in with Bill Watts coming in a little bit later. They come in, they're complete brawlers. They go completely ape crazy, and double shoulder tackles, power slams, lots of power moves. Both guys intense and enjoying things. They kind of do a crisscross. They beat up the enhancement talents, go all the way out to the floor, beat them up, bring them down, and they're dominant, working the leg. Actually, Gordy does a half crab, which is rather ironic, at least to me. Kind of the crab there, and again, away we go into a more, I guess you'd say, committed shot. Kicks to the midsection and the like, and then a suplex by Gordy. Gordy again, one of the free birds from a while ago. At this point, by the early to mid 90s, the majority of his time spent in Japan because the money was better for him over there, but comes back to WCW at the time, and then Williams hits the Oklahoma Stampede, gets a victory. Gordy hits a release power bomb, and that's pretty intense in and of itself. Then we're hyping Beach Blast, which is the next WCW pay-per-view. They kind of moved to having pay-per-views about 6 times a year here in 1992, maybe 8. But more pay-per-views than normal, and they've got to fill those cards out, certainly. And then we kind of see more of the WCW magazine style stuff. Freebirds complain about being unseated in the upcoming NWA tournament, even though they are the U.S. Tag Team Champions. They're annoyed, they're frustrated, they feel they haven't been given the proper respect. And then we go back to, which I will eventually cover the full match in when I do Clash of Champions review, which I started and just kind of didn't get to. When it goes back up on the network, I think they said August to October is when the network's going to be completely flushed out with all 17,000 hours of stuff. I will go back to doing the Clash of Champions stuff. Cactus Jack is here and he's promoting his series with Sting. He wants to completely eliminate Sting, abominate Sting. At the time, he was only brought in short term. That ends up being a multi-year run for Cactus. I think he's here 92 to 94. But that match with Sting makes him, in a lot of ways, aggressively, assertively, and there you go. And without a doubt, you've got Cactus basically saying he's going to crush Sting completely. Sting obviously not a fan of that, but can't really stop him. Ron Simmons begins what becomes, over the next 4 to 5 months, a meteoric push here. Of course, I don't know that it's known that he's going to go as far as he goes into becoming the first Black World Heavyweight Champion here in August of this year. But here he's just, in a match with Terry Taylor, otherwise known as the Red Roosters. They kind of do a bit of a basic match, but at the same time, Simmons trying to get over with the crowd, doing the Braves, the Atlanta Braves chop deal, and good match for Simmons. Simmons, of course, up the card for a little bit, and then down the card, up the card to face Lex Luger in October of 91 at Halloween Havoc. Goes down the card here a little bit, just kind of lost for a little bit, but goes right back up the card here in the spring to summer and through the fall of 1982. Snap power slam by Simmons, insane, and out goes Taylor, who is certainly satisfied with that. We see a lot of power moves by Simmons, starving off his opponent here. A lot of backward motion by Taylor. Taylor does a lot of complaining, cuts him off, hits a jawjacker, among other things. And Taylor tries to keep Simmons down, but the brawling obviously is left to the much more powerful Simmons, so Taylor goes with choking and using every other illegal tactic he can along the way. But that, turns into a bit of a multifaceted brawl for quite a while here. And Taylor tries to eliminate Simmons. Simmons comes back with a shoulder tackle. Greg Valentine, who is the partner of Terry Taylor, or has been for the last several months at this point, puts Taylor's foot on the bottom rope, interfering to help his tag team partner, and eventually Simmons does get the victory, and there is a clash between Valentine and Taylor, and a roll-up by Simmons, and they kind of go into a little 2-on-1 there. Then we go to another match of value. Beautiful Bobby Eaton and Arn Anderson, I believe in a tag match here, yes. Tag match, members of the Dangerous Alliance. Larry Zbyszko is also here. So 6-man tag team action on the heels of the Wrestle War pay-per-view and that. And again, this is not where they want everything to be, certainly, but then we go to Steamboat, Koloff, and Rhodes are the 6-man tag team opponents. Awesome stuff. I believe there's 2 out of 3 falls as well. But in any event, these are, 6 of the people that were going to be in the War Games match, the match beyond. Some people say one of the better War Games ever. Some strategy. Amazing to me that Dustin Rhodes is still certainly not in his prime. He's shy of there, but still a major force in the wrestling business 30 years later at this point. And Bobby Eaton, Ricky Steamboat square off. Amazing, just
stuff there, basic psychology. Of course, Paul Heyman managing the heels in the Dangerous Alliance. I think they've run the Dangerous Alliance thing through early 93, maybe late 92, somewhere between like November and January of November 92, January 93. I think the Dangerous Alliance breaks up. Bobby Eaton, so smooth, able to hold Steamboat down for several minutes. They work the headlock for a couple of minutes there, roll him over, and Steamboat gets a short comeback, cleans house a bit, and the baby faces are impressed by this. Eaton actually goes for sunset flip, rolled over into a Boston Crab. Steamboat switches spots, and Anderson Zbyszko comes in, but Steamboat stays on him. Steamboat takes the majority of this match, at least during the early stages. Zbyszko, not a guy that is known to do abundance of a lot, but when he's in there with a guy who can move around for him and bump for him and all that, Zbyszko really, really good. Of course, Zbyszko trained by Bruno Sammartino. Arn Anderson and Dustin Rhodes eventually end up squaring off during the match. Rhodes takes a couple of shots at Anderson and knocks him back, literally and figuratively. That leads to, Rhodes looking really strong. At this point, Dustin Rhodes, probably about 3 or 4 years in the business at this point. Then we go back to a switch to Steamboat having control over Anderson. Clears the house as other members of the Dangerous Alliance try to come in, and chaos ensues. Paul Heyman on the outside is unhappy. Anderson asking for a timeout. Heyman's unhappy because Anderson goes back in and doesn't fare really any better than his opponent had been before that point, and ultimately that slows things down as far as the Dangerous Alliance progress. Finally does brawl back a little bit, but Steamboat runs behind, and again a tag to Koloff. Now Koloff, I don't know that he's in for the first time in this match, but he hasn't been in very long. The Dangerous Alliance has a couple of minutes where they're trying to switch around with him, figure out who's going to handle him. Obviously, Koloff does the majority of the impervious to pain, but eventually hits a couple of offensive maneuvers, including but not limited to a drop kick. Koloff does bring Eaton back in with a vertical suplex as well, snaps him over, and eventually the Dangerous Alliance gets him down and beats on Koloff for several minutes. Everything from punches, kicks, and a inverted neck crank, among other things, leads to their dominance for that next little while. The baby faces do get the first fall in this 2 out of 3 fall contest, and a crossbody from Steamboat gets them that victory, but obviously 2 out of 3 falls is the way they want things to go there in this particular contest. And again, they're happy, they're satisfied, and the referee is trying to keep everything going according to plan. And they're, obviously that 6-man action was predominating in Texas. They come back and go back to the, I believe, second fall. Second fall starts with the baby faces in control. Anderson comes back in with Steamboat. Steamboat puts him in the abdominal stretch, holds him there for several minutes. And then we kind of see tag off and working over Anderson, primarily the arm. Dustin Rhodes and Arn Anderson, which becomes a feud a couple of years later. But here it's just good hand for Rhodes to be in the ring with. There eventually becomes a double figure 4, and then actually a triple figure 4 with all the baby faces having figure 4s on all the heels. Paul Heyman upset by that at ringside, as one can imagine. And then we kind of go to things breaking down and the heels going to the outside. Anderson getting sent off the top rope and to the arena floor. Heels having to regroup on the outside. They are not happy with that action. Heyman also not happy, and then we go back to a breakdown, cut off on Rhodes. Rhodes takes everything from a hammerlock slam and a bunch of punishment for the next several minutes here. Rhodes, of course, the least experienced of the baby faces, so him taking punishment makes sense. Bobby Eaton squaring off with him, takes him to the top rope and hits a beautiful Randy Savage style elbow on his adversary. The baby faces come in to break it up, and the match continues to break down into a Donnybrook. If you want to learn wrestling psychology, without a doubt, this is certainly worth checking out. So much here where they're always in motion, but they don't need to be doing a lot of crazy stuff. Rhodes takes over on Eaton again. Meanwhile, Anderson getting yelled at to a degree by Paul Heyman. And we will be right back as I get to grab my phone, but we'll be back in 2 seconds. And again, the match is super intelligently booked, and for the most part, most of the WCW stuff at this time was. With about 8 minutes left in the program, they're still continuing to go into the third fall. I love it. Arn Anderson, his level of frustration with being in the ring shows in facial expressions. It shows in a lot of different ways, but he never really gives up on being focused. You know, drops the knee, oddly goes to the top rope, and that's a little weird. We see him get crotched on that top rope. Koloff tries to finish him off, and we see a double team by the babyfaces, back double chop and all that. Ultimately, we see continuation of the babyfaces taking control. At one point, a cutoff, and Bobby Eaton comes back in, body slam, and back on Steamboat. Again, I can't emphasize enough, if you like wrestling that makes sense, 1992 WCW in a lot of ways when it comes to WCW Saturday Night main event and middle-level matches that aren't squashes from a psychological perspective most often. Can't say everything because I haven't seen everything yet, but most often makes sense. And if you're out there watching as a wrestler or listening as a wrestler, worth going out of your way to look at that and kind of get to a place where you can see your own value. Tag off, and Koloff comes back in as kind of a last minute. They run almost till the end of the program, and a Russian sickle by Koloff and a pin on Anderson is where we go. So that will close us off for this one. We'll be back with more of these, plus the WrestleMania Night 2, WrestleMania 37 Night 2 as well. Keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.